Good evening, guys, and welcome back to the What Life. First things first, let's get down to business. I have a YouTube video out that I will tag at the top of the screen now where you can win yourself a pair of Sun God sunglasses. So dive onto that and drop it a comment and make sure you watch it. And guys, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy it. So this evening we are racing. It's a slightly longer race than we are used to, so I've tried to trim it down as much as possible. This is hot, guys. It's a really good one. I actually really enjoyed it. It's really hard. We've gone from doing 20-minute races to 36-minute races, so the efforts are significantly, well, just harder, right? Or not quite as hard, but longer. So we are still doing the Zwift monthly series. We are at the Race the World. So this is a big weekly event, and there's 160 people on the start pen, so we know it's going to be a hot one. Everyone goes out, as we expect, quite hard. Some stats on the race for you. It's 14.7 miles, 23.7 kilometers, 282 meters of vert for the race. So we skipped through a lot of the early part of the race because in actual fact we had such a big group. This was the 5 p.m. UK time race, very much a prime time spot. I actually did the double, guys. I did the 5 p.m. and then I did the 6 p.m. back to back. So this is a double episode of the Zwift monthly races, both Cat C. So you'll get the 5 p.m. and then you get the 6 p.m. that will follow on from this one. So if you race the 6 p.m, I will tag it as the point on the video. I'll chapter it so that you know where to skip through to. So the 5 p.m. we kicked off pretty hard. I kind of decided that I was going to race this one quite tactically. I thought, right, let's just sit in the bunch. My only concern when we were in the bunch was just to make sure that no one rode off the front. So I spend a lot of the first half kind of just sat in this kind of middle group trying to conserve energy, just trying to roll through. I've also, for this race and from now on, I've included the, I don't know what it called, those stat graphs at the bottom of the screen that shows you a history of my wattage and my heart rate. So keep an eye on that when we kind of, well, certainly when we start working through the climbs. Some info about this course. It's ultimately, you know, we're on the Scotland map, so it's generally rolling as it is. But there is one particular climb that is going to separate and break up this group quite savagely. So I kind of did a bit of research, a bit of recon into the race and realized that that was going to be the pivotal point and that that was going to break up the group. So we all had to, well, I just had to make sure that I was in contention and I was holding that front group by the time we got to that climb, and then I had the beans to ride that climb hard. I will say that the 5 p.m. race was fast. We finish it in 36 something. I think the leaders of the 5 p.m. is slightly quicker than the 6 p.m. race, which I thought was really interesting. But the 6 p.m. race, when I play it back for you guys, I'm actually going to put, rather than the video of me cycling in the corner, I'm actually going to have the earlier race playing at the same time, so you can see just relatively how the two different Cat C races compare. So I hold the front group in this one. There is something, or someone I actually want to point out. There is a friend of mine called Anna Boniface. She is a very good runner, like a kind of, what do they call it, sub-elite runner. She has a incredible 10k, 5k and marathon time. I think her marathon times, I want to say 2:38, Anna, and please don't kill me if I get that wrong. She trains hard on the bike as well. She is wearing, it's quite hard because a few people are actually wearing the kit, but she has a white helmet on and she has that blue Garmin jersey on. And funnily enough, we just end up in the front group, and I think there's like 2 or 3 people all wearing the same Garmin blue jersey. But I'll point her out as and when, because she rides this one incredibly well. And I'm not sure what her weight is exactly, but she is a lighter female. There she goes. She's just passing me now in the blue Garmin top and the yellow boots. I will also add, Anna, that you rode this pretty horribly. You were at the front a lot of the time. Every time I looked up at the screen, you were up at the front, and I think this is a point when you do the same thing. So tactics really weren't your thing. You just getting in a savagely hard ride. I think if I get over to Zwift Power, I might be able to check out what your watts per kg was for the race. Talking of which, my watts per kg for this race was 3.3 watts per kg, 255 4 watts, and I think that's normalized to maybe 260 something based on the climb and my weight. I'm pretty happy with it. I think I say this every week that it's tough. It's just been a tough week. I also didn't get my heart rate that high this week, so I think I am struggling with a bit of fatigue. I've kind of somehow managed to do that thing where I end up just riding too hard when I'm going out with friends. I did my fastest ever 50k yesterday with a chain gang. That'll be on YouTube next week. But yeah, it's all kicking off, and I have a video next week that is basically, this is the back end of 6 weeks of training, guys. So hopefully you've been following along with the journey, and you can see that I've been making improvements, and I'm going to do an FTP test. I have a couple of days of like real rest and easy, and then do an FTP test. So you will see, hopefully, the practical application of training and training properly, and kind of the effect that has had on my FTP. So there's me and Anna. Anna's just to my left as we go up the hill, and this has been up to this point, I kind of sat at the back of the ride and haven't really done too much. I wanted to attack this hill from the front because I knew that this was going to be the pivotal point. You get dropped off on this hill, on this climb, you are not making it back onto the group. They will leave you for dust on the descent. I also think a few guys might have decided to ride on gravel bikes. I certainly know in the 6 p.m. ride that a few people turned up on a gravel bike, to which they were dusted before they even got to the climb, which is a gravel climb, but I don't think it's worth it. So if you haven't ridden it and you're thinking about doing it, definitely don't ride it on a gravel bike. This is a road bike race with a gravel section. So we go into this climb and we are holding it quite well. I will also add that my gear management, my mechanical gears on my bike was horrible in my first race, and I smoothed it out way more in my second race. The plan for the climb was just to try and stay with the front of the group and hold on and make sure that no one rode off the front. Interestingly, if you do kind of fancy it, the second race, a lot more people attacked and it felt like it was more jerky. This one just felt really super smooth. Look, there goes Anna dropping her feather and just laying down the watts. She's like did I mention her weight? She was a lightweight rider. I think she comes in around 52 kg. I might have that a little bit wrong. 50-ish kg, I want to say. Let me see. Yeah, 52 kg. She rode 4 watts per kg at an average of 209 for the ride, which is normalized to 213. So climbing is definitely her thing, and she's a strong cyclist. She's a very fit individual, as you see her just tear away at near the front, because there is the Anna imposter who's also wearing the Garmin kit but's on the Tron bike. So this climb, I kind of got to this point and decided, there were a few kind of do or die moments where it's like, right, if you don't put the watts down, you're going to lose the group and they're going to ride off. So as a general rule of thumb, this climb was ridden quite hard, and there were a few steep bits. So the power-ups definitely made for a bit of a bonus and a little bit of help. So being in this front group here definitely paid dividends. Hi Anna, look, there you are on my left. And all we have to do is, I just knew it, like, this is the tough part for the race. We're kind of almost midway through the race. You just have to make sure that you hold on, and you can see on the mini map top right that the whole front pack is strung out. So this was such a big race with close to 160 people on the start line that you want to make sure that if there is a break, you're on the right side of it. So putting down the watts for this period, it was really hard, and every time that little screen thing flashes up with close the gap, it's demoralizing, if anything, because you're like, right, am I not getting a draft now? So you just have to work that little bit harder. But that little bit of work, and you see, this is the point where it breaks, right? And it looks like I am at the back. So this is the break, or it looks like it's going to be the break, and I'm at the back of that. So if I drop off this, I'm dusted, guys. That'll be my game over. So I've basically got no option now but to absolutely try and work and hold on to this front group as we slowly move away from the snake that is making its way up the mountain. But I'm always keeping one eye on the map and when we're going to bridge the top, and then there's the gate. So it looks like I've just about held on, and I've ridden this reasonably well. No one's charged off the front other than Anna and her imposter, who are both up there kind of putting down big climbs. And I just have to kick through the arch to make sure I don't get dropped on the descent, and we will skip through the descent because look, well, there we go. Managed to hold on to the group, and then the group moves nicely. And I think that breaks it down to maybe 18, 19 riders up front now. And that's our lot. That's it. That's the break. That is basically the group that is going to ride from here to pretty much the finish. We do obviously come back over this, but the climb back over is way easier than, or kind of the reverse of this climb when we come back over is way easier than the climb that we have just done, or it certainly feels that way anyway. So we've set our group up, and it's all very good riding. I take this point to dive in the chat and just say chapeau to everyone for their excellence of just making it over the mountain and splitting the group and riding off and kind of holding some good watts. It's at this point that the race actually kind of calms down a little bit. I think basically everyone is catching their breath and recovering. And I think that if this had been a Cat B race, that obviously this section, and you will see on my watt history down the bottom, that there's a few sections where I'm just trying to do my absolute best to not put any watts into this race, yet still stay on the group. And Anna, if you do take the time to watch this, that is exactly what you should be doing as well. I only know this because everyone feels like they can dive in the comments on the videos and tell me that that's what I should do. So that is ultimately what I'm trying to do. There are a few little rolling hills, and these were the hills that in the previous week that people attacked a lot harder. I think now that we've been over and done a bit more of a build up and a savage introduction before getting here, these were a little bit calmer when it came to riding them, certainly in this race. I think if you kind of take the time to look at the 6 p.m. race, you'll see that a few people attack these and just break the groups up, and it was brutal. It was super hard. Yeah, I think the 6 p.m. race, like, there were a few kind of what I like to refer to as silly buggers who want to just play a few games and break the group up and just move the group forward, which is, well, it's all good and it's all part of it, but it made it a lot harder to ride. The 5 p.m. we were super smooth with it. The whole group worked together. No one really tried to attack the group and ride off the front. It was just now 18, 19, 20 people maybe just riding hard, just pushing along. So it was interesting because no one really kind of hammered it and kind of took the race by the horns, if you will, until a bit later when we get back into Glasgow. A few rolling hills, and like I said, these start to really hurt the legs after putting the effort in. And if you are doing the Race of the World series, we're coming up to that 22 minutes kind of period, which is for the previous 2 weeks, you'd be finishing now. That the races were 20 minutes and 22 minutes long. So now this is kind of going into that point where we still have 5 miles to go. I will openly admit that I actually don't know the course that well from here on in. I got in the chat and basically said, I think we're doing great, guys. And someone's like, well, we still got to go back over that climb. And my heart obviously sank in my chest. Well, it would have if it wasn't beating so hard that it was coming out of my mouth. But it definitely kind of made me feel a bit sad to know that we had to go back over the climb. But, I am somewhat comforted, as you guys should always be, by the fact that we're all in this together. So if I feel like, oh crap, we got to go over the climb again, then I'm sure everyone else does. This is another point where, like, I look up and there's Anna just charging at the front, doing Anna things, just like putting it down. And it, like, I haven't really had a chance to catch up with that. I also know that she did a 30-mile warm-up ride this morning and then came in and did this race. But you can see the way that she just charges and attacks the race, and it is slightly she has a slightly different approach to me, who was basically, if I could have grabbed the back of someone's jersey and held on, I probably would have. She takes the bulls by the horn, and she does actually ride this hard, hence why she is averaging 4 watts per kg as a 52 kg cyclist, and I am coming in at 3.3 watts per kg for this ride. I'd love to know kind of what being like a 50 kg cyclist feels like. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. So we're going back over the climb, and this bit was a bit of a sufferfest. Again, like, it's super kind of, it's a fragile point in the race. Like, it's a little bit nerve-wracking because you know that if you fall off the watts and you fall off the group, then you're gone and there's no way you're going to catch them. Look at that, some guy in the Paz kit. I really, if you are the guy in the Paz kit and you're watching this, please just drop a comment, because I just want to say hi. Not that I do love the Paz guys. We had a great ride with them out in Mallorca for the 312 when we were out there earlier in the year. But I just Paz, right? Anyway, going back over the climb, as I was saying, it's a tough one because you have to just hold on and you have to work. But I felt like, even though our group was riding well, no one particularly kind of attacks the climb or like really tries to hammer it. So we just moved super smooth. It just felt like this race was I don't know whether it's because I was probably a bit more tired going into the second race, but this race definitely felt smoother. It felt like we were all just like reading from the same page and just like, okay, well, you know, no one kind of kicked hard. Everyone just moved forward, and then we just, yeah, it didn't necessarily feel like anyone was attacking the group. But as we crest the top of this climb, it was always going to be super important to make sure you don't lose the group on the descent. And again, I talk about it every now and again. You guys might think, you know, what the hell is he talking about? But Zwift Dynamics, which is the in-game kind of proprietary like software in the world that they build, that kind of world engine, encourages the group to stay together. So, you know, it is actually quite hard to separate a group. And what I mean by that is, like, if there's a little bit of a gap, I think the dynamics of the game actually kind of encourages you as the rider behind to be able to ride back onto the group, because ultimately Zwift as a game, which is effectively what it is, wants people to ride in big groups because it makes it more entertaining, it makes it more enjoyable. So it's not necessarily like representative of real life as such, obviously, but there is a slight dynamic within it, and sometimes I refer to it, where you can just, like, you'll see small little groups or small 1-2 riders ride off, and then the group just kind of, or 1-2s just kind of pick them up. And that's what I like to refer to as the dynamics within the game. So we're heading back into Glasgow now, and if you have been watching the UCI races, hi Anna at the front again. If you have been watching the UCI, Anna, what are you doing? What? Just come on, get back here, girl. Just sit on the back. You are just crushing this race. If the finish line had been here, you would have absolutely right. Someone does write Vanderpool in the comments, and I really hope it's the guy that then just goes into a hammer sprint. Like, if that is you, my hat is completely off to you. If you literally just wrote VDP in the comments and then just drop the watts and fly off the front, you are actually my hero for the next 24 hours. I think that's a great move, and more people should do that. But you know, if it wasn't you that dropped the comment and you still just fly off the front of the group, there is a lot of respect there. But we're coming into, obviously, Glasgow, and we've had the UCIs going on for the last 2 weeks, which has been fantastic. But you can kind of see that, like, no one attacks the group, other than Vanderpool up front. No one actually attacks this group super hard, and we kind of all move through together. And there are a couple of these little rolling hills, obviously, that you might be familiar with, having raced some of the crit races here, or done, or, well, you know, ridden in the Glasgow Scotland World before. But that was the thing, and hopefully, I mean, I was super familiar with it. I'm sure everyone else was. So you kind of know that these little kickers are coming up, and you've just got to kind of be on your toes for it. The guy who did shout Vanderpool and then melted off into the distance is just up front. This is where I decide that, you know, this is where the race is going to kind of move, and something is kind of might happen as we kind of come up that last climb. Things flatten out a little bit. People are dropping their power-ups coming up into the sprint. Like, I'm pretty well positioned, I think. Like, just trying to hold on to my feather and time it. I don't think I necessarily time it that well. I just, you know, I am getting a little bit better at a sprint, guys. Watch the watts. I'm getting a little bit better at my sprinting. Look, touching 700. Yeah, like, that's a tiny bit better than it has been. You know, sometimes I barely make it out of the 300-400. So, guys, what a race. That was really good. Have a quick look at my power curve. Like, that kind of, I am improving kind of a little bit at the top end now. So these are all, you know, I'm just moving my cycling forward, and I'm really enjoying it. So thanks for joining, guys. I'm going to dive straight into the 6 p.m. race. Stick around. Also, don't forget Sun God competition, other video. Check it out. Drop a comment. See you on the next one. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to The What Life. First things first, I have a video that I put up today from SunGod where you can win yourself a free pair of sunglasses. I'll link it at the top now. Go and check it out and drop a comment on the video and subscribe to the channel if you like it. So we are doing the Race of the Worlds round the world series. Can't completely forgotten what it's called, but I did the 5 PM in the UK race, and then I took on the 6 PM race, which is this one. So if you are joining, this is basically my second race in a row. First race we did a time, well, we put in some good times. I was actually a bit caught off guard on the start here, as you can see. Really good numbers in both races. I think there's slightly less riders in the second race, but it does hair out pretty fast. I've decided to put my first race is just showing in the bottom of the screen rather than me riding. It felt like the second race was a little bit jerky on the on the watts. We were just kind of picking up pace and slowing down pace. But first things first, I get a little bit caught out, and you can kind of see me struggling to kind of hold on to the group. I don't know what it is. Maybe I was just a little bit tired, and I suddenly realised that, wait, if I don't put the work in now, then I'm actually not even going to have a race whatsoever, because I'm going to lose the front right off the bat. So not ideal for me, having to kind of dive in straight away and then just put the watts down to try and just hold on to the front. But it there was a few nuances between the 5 PM and the 6 PM in the UK race, and this one felt like there were a few guys that just wanted to take the bull by the horns and race it pretty hard. Some stats for you guys. We are doing the Race of the World series, the Muckley Yin. There is one big climb in it, which means that the elevation for the race is 282 meters. The distance for the race is 23.7 k or 14.7 miles. The clock in the two videos is slightly different, because obviously the clock doesn't start until you finish the lead in, so I think I was just a little bit slower getting to the start line for the clock on the second race. But the group is moving off well, and for this, I get dropped by the front group towards the very end. So my finish time is about a minute and a bit, I think, minute and a half slower than my race before, because I do actually dog it out and finish the race, because that's the kind of guy I am. But hopefully you can see the difference between the two groups and the position based, or certainly my speed, as we move through both races, and you can see both of them happening at the same time. So obviously, if you are doing this race for the first time, the 6 PM, the big move, or the big kind of pivotal point in the race, is always going to be the climb over the top. So the goal is to be in good position for that. I tried to take the approach of just trying to sit in the group and kind of hold on to as many wheels as possible, and pick up the biggest draft that I can coming into the race. I didn't really want to try anything other than just kind of sitting in the middle of the pack and kind of holding on. The problem for me with this race was that a few people attacked every now and again, and obviously if someone attacks, then it does encourage a few guys at the front to try and bridge, and then those bridges just kind of move the group forward, and you end up kind of putting these little bursts in. And this might be like a really good example of one here, as you can kind of see me struggling a little bit to hold the group. And obviously there is a degree of fatigue going on. I have just done a 36-minute tempo session, and then I followed it up kind of trying to perform on this race as well. The Scotland map is slightly rolling highlands, so you do get a little bit of reprieve every now and again with some flat, but it doesn't really stay for too long. There's always a little kicker or something, not necessarily a big climb, but a little kicker to get up and over. It's just a tough map, and I really like it for those reasons. So I sit on the back. Some wattage for you. I hold 3.2 watts. But bear in mind, I get dropped from the front group with 7 or 8 minutes to go. So that's a good indicator of how this race was going. It was a tough race, especially going up the climb, or the main climb. So I just managed to hold on to the group and stick with the group. And again, like I said, I'd love to be able to ride at the front. I'd love to be able to be the guy that helps change the pace and dictate the pace, but that just wasn't my role today. These little rolling kickers, I just tried my best. Having just ridden this race before, I kind of knew where they were coming up. I knew a bit better about my gear selection. I definitely handled my power-ups a bit more. But you can see how the groups are kicking off the top of them. And that was just making such a change to the way that this race was being ridden. So like in the 5 p.m. race, if you go back and watch that, if you didn't ride that one, it wasn't quite like that. People weren't kicking off the top. People weren't attacking. Everyone was just moving forward as a nice big group, holding some really good pace. This group definitely felt like it was just putting in these little kicks, and it was tearing the group up, and it definitely made it harder to ride. And I obviously there was a degree of fatigue involved, but I did find this one just a completely different race. I found it a lot harder to hold on to. And hold on to the group on, because there were just these little kicks in pace. Now we're coming up to effectively like the pivotal point, which is this big climb up and over. And I knew with the way that this race was going already that there were going to be some guys that probably would attack this and take it quite hard. So my positioning on the climb was always going to be key. And it is quite hard to motivate yourself, having just finished but effectively a 40-minute tempo session, to come back out and try and do the same again. So with every crank of the pedal I was thinking, do I really need this? But I was enjoying it. I didn't want to let you guys down now that I'd started the race. So here's the climb, and I knew that we were in a very big group. I knew that we were going to have to work hard. Interestingly, I mean, did I mention this? That this race was 30 seconds slower than the race before. So bear that in mind when you're looking at the difference between the point at which I am cycling in both races. The winner of this race was 30 seconds behind the winner of the 5 p.m. race. I think just a different group, slightly smaller group off the start line. But at this point, you know, the group sizes are pretty similar. Hopefully you can see that. But the attacking, I think it was just the attacking, the way that people were trying to break up groups in this ride that changed the dynamic of the race and just made it harder for everyone to ride it consistently with solid watts. And so those fire trails, I think they come out, the fire socks, you only get them if you get to level 50 on Zwift. They only come out if you basically increase your wattage by a certain percentage. It's basically like a little kick. It just shows that someone is actually just putting in a little bit of an effort with those little fire trails. But good indicator that someone has just decided to stomp on the pedals and pushing forward. I am basically trying my hardest. I've really got to hold on to the group. Basically, if I lose the group now, I'm done for. I'm dusted. Throw me in the bin. I'm no good. I'm not going to hold on. And it was worrying me that I was falling off so much on this climb. And if you look at the mini map top right, the group is breaking up, and where my position in that group is basically what I'm keeping an eye on. If the group strings out, but there's loads of people behind you, but it's stringy, then you've got half a chance of just kind of, you know, everyone working together to kind of, I guess, concertina, is that the right word? The group back together. Look at me playing with the big dictionary. So my goal was that if I got dropped on this climb, there's just, you know, that's kind of the end of it for me, and I wouldn't really that's what I wanted to do, was what that guy just did, which was basically get a bike. If I get dropped on this climb, then I'm finished. It's game over. I'm not really gonna be able to ride the rest of this. You know, would I even bother? So I'm doing my absolute best, and every time I try and kind of use that kind of, I don't know anyone, this probably does show my age, but if you've ever watched Cole Trickle in Days of Thunder, when he is improving his lap times, and then his coach comes on and says, hey, you know, you're going too fast. He goes, well, I'm not going fast, someone's going slower. So I was trying to use the points when the group slows down to basically just be consistent with my watts to ride back up the group. And I think that's like a little handy tidbit, you know, if you're consistent with it and the group is kind of moving off because they're putting a kick in, but you can hold your wattage, you tend to be able to kind of just ride up with them. Obviously the draft has slightly less of an effect, but at this point my heart is sinking a little bit because my legs are absolutely killing me. My heart is about to explode, and it does look like the guys at the front are just sneaking away from me, and there is a little bit of daylight between that group, which looks like everyone has agreed to ride on a Tron bike, and then our little group kind of towards just like the back. And look at the mini map, everyone is so strung out now. So while you probably will pick up a chase group and it could be a good ride, I was kind of determined to try and just stick with it, but sadly they are just cycling away. Gosh. And then there is one guy obviously leading the climb and putting in a really strong effort as he kind of just powers his way. But we're almost at the top, so this is it. Like, once you kind of know where you are, once you get through the UCI arch, you know you're at the top of the climb. And this, guys, is where I just have a little resurgence just to cycle back up to these two guys, hoping that if we can work together we might be able to pull off something. But from here it basically looks like the guys at the front have made basically a little section up front, and they are just about to hammer the downhill, and then I am kind of stuck in a little bit of no man's land. So there's too much daylight between the guys in front and me for me as a solo to do anything, because I'm jazzed out, my legs are killing me, I'm really hurting. But here we go, guys, my little chariots of fire, my saviors, come burning through. We now have a pack of 7 people now determined to chase down that little crew. Did you see that guy just do a U-turn? What was he doing? So, but there is a bit of daylight. It looks like some guy is charged off the front, and then there is a splinter group up there. But I don't know how this happens. I don't know who did this. I don't know who led this. But check this out. I am so impressed with this. Like, I am about to die. I literally, if this didn't happen, I would have just fallen off my bike and collapsed in tears. But the guys work really hard. Some guy then goes and puts a little extra kick in. Our little group just decides that we're not going to give up. And it does look like the front group have broken away from us. But for some reason, I don't know whether they are just taking a chance to recover and to breathe. But our 7 riders turns into 8 as we pick up another guy, right? And this is it. Look, we are bringing them back in. Check it out. So I was very impressed with this. It kind of looks like we are all working together. And then we basically just get a little sniff of the guys in front. We realize they haven't completely disappeared off into the distance. And then a miracle happens as a few guys put a bit of a kick in. And then we all just, one by one, draft off each other and bring the group back. I have a feeling that the front group messed that up big time. If they'd ridden a bit harder, if they kept their eyes on the mini-map, they could have ridden that a bit harder and kind of lost another 8 or 9 people. Obviously, I get dropped before the end anyway, so it's a bit irrelevant. But I do dive in the chat to say that was a super strong effort to get back onto the front group. And I think that was very impressive, and probably one of my kind of proudest little Zwift moments, if that even is a thing. I'm not sure it should be, considering we're talking about computer games ultimately. So we're going to scooch through a little bit, because basically we now have what looks like a 25, maybe 22 person group just moving through the highlands, doing all the kind of rolling burrs, and nothing too crazy happens. But as I said, this 6 p.m. race, there were a few guys that did like to attack. Every time we get to these little climbs, and here is another one, someone just like decides that they are going to be the one that just has to kind of be the first at the top, first at the lamppost, and then they just put these kicks in. And I almost get completely caught out as I try and, I think I was trying to get a drink or a jet or something, and almost get completely caught out on that climb and drop from the group a little bit too early. But there's always someone on 6 p.m. ride who was just attacking off the front, and then it kind of just breaking the group up a little bit, or certainly made the group work that little bit harder. It definitely felt a little bit less even. So as mentioned, we do come in, or the winner of this is, I think, about 30 seconds behind the winner of the previous race, and then yeah, anyway, we're going up this climb again, and same thing happens. Someone decides to attack, obviously. Then people are just, I think this is what wears the ride everyone down. We're basically just it's a whole race of people just wearing each other down, where someone attacks and then the group has to work back up, and someone has to jump on the pedals and drop the watts. And you see 2 guys, if a guy goes off solo and we're 6 miles out and you're a group of 25, just honestly guys, just let that guy go off solo. There is no way in hell that he's going to ride away from a 25-person group. The only reason you would chase him down is if you wanted to join his little peloton and try and work with a group of 4 or 5 people to move away from that front group. But even then, with 6 miles to go, 5.5 miles to go, just under 10k, that's still a lot of cycling left for a 25-person group in Zwift with the Zwift dynamics. They will probably always end up drawing you back in, even if they do just sit at a rather kind of casual wattage. But you see what it does to the dynamic of the race is that it just it keeps stretching things out, keeps working, it keeps maybe overworking some people's legs, certainly overworking mine, and then ultimately the guy that kind of takes that lead, he's not really going anywhere. He's just sat up front, and then the group comes powering back through. So it's one of those moments where I think, and I'm not saying I'm the guru of all things when it comes to racing, but sometimes, as a group, you can just let someone solo off the front and just safe in the knowledge that they're not really going anywhere, guys. Don't panic, especially when you're this far out on a race. If that had been mile and a half, yes, panic. Start going with him, start making the move. Same deal happens on this climb. It's just an absolute what fest. No one kind of really got the memo of the fact that we can, we are faster working together. But again, I do like a good tear up. I like a race, and this definitely felt like a proper kind of racy race environment. We're going to move through the last few climbs before we try and go back over the big climb and then down to Glasgow to finish off. Again, I definitely at this point I was struggling heart rate wise, but the group is working, and then same thing kind of happens. I think what was happening, it felt like basically because one person had attacked, then someone else thought, well, perhaps I'll do it, or I don't know what the motivation behind it, I don't know what the mentality was behind it. Just these little individuals kind of moving, pushing, and kind of just striving. I don't know whether that's the same guy on his Tron bike just being like, look at me, but a couple of guys again, and this is just what I think wears down the group, because that definitely changes the race. These guys that decide that they're going to try, and I don't know whether they're just trying or whether they're just putting down good watts, but it definitely felt that was the thing that meant that as a whole, I don't think we put down maybe the time that was as quick as the previous race. But it was still a good tear up, a really good race, and I'm pretty happy to be holding on, considering we did 36 minutes in the last race, and I'm basically coming up to an hour of effectively hard riding, which for me is really good. And my goal is to improve as a cyclist, improve as a rider, and this is why I decided to try and do a double race, to try and use it as like a double tempo session to get the absolute most out of it. And I'm definitely going to have a few easy days. I am going to retest my FTP later in the week. I've done a 6-week training program, so if you have been following the journey, guys, A, I appreciate you, it's been a lot of fun, I am enjoying it, but B, now's the time that hopefully we're going to see some practical application of the training and just the consistency of cycling and how that translates. Ultimately though, in the sad news in the world of this particular Zwift race, we are coming to an end for me, because we are about to basically go back over the big climb. My brain was melted, my legs were on fire, and just like my heart rate, I couldn't really get it as high as I wanted it. I just didn't have the energy, didn't have the strength to do it, to kind of put the effort to going back into the climb. So I don't manage to hold the group going back over, but again, it's the same silly bugger stuff that I imagine this group gets broken up. I do manage to finish the race. I take it to the hole because, that's the kind of guy I am. I didn't want to, with only 2 or so miles left in the race, I thought, well, might as well walk it round and finish up. I average for this race 3.2 watts per kg. Let me just see what that comes down as, which is 244 watt average, which is 258 normalized because of the hills of my weight. which isn't too bad considering that I get dropped off this section here. I am trying my hardest. Like, I would have loved to have been the hero that could have brought it home on back-to-back 40-minute races, the 20-minute or 30-minute recovery, but it just wasn't happening. The group seriously just moved away from me. Again, I think someone's up front driving the group, and I was just like, I can't do that. I just don't have the strength in me. Can't even get my heart rate up into the 160s. And this is basically where I I wave it all off, and I do get into the chat and just say, right, bye all, that's me done. Everyone is obviously too busy racing to back and say anything, but I do appreciate you guys, and drop a comment below if you did race the 6 p.m. That's UK time, by the way. I don't really know how we standardize the time on Zwift, but I will give you a quick look at my power curve. I won't make you watch me cycle over to finish the rest of this race. Let's just cut it here to me crossing the finish line, and then I will give you a quick look at my power curve, and you can see that I'm up there. So there are definitely improvements being made to do a back-to-back, basically 36-minute session, then a 30-minute session. I am quite happy with it. I think I'm making improvements. So I will see you guys on the next one. Come say hi in the comments. Don't forget to check out the Sun God video. I will tag it at the very end as well. Thanks guys. I will see you on the next one.